The city of Nkoro shimmered beneath a sky heavy with clouds. The marketplace throbbed with life, traders calling out prices, drums echoing from a distant square, and the scent of roasted maize rising with the sea breeze. Gold and dust danced together in the air, the gold from the mansions of the rich, the dust from the feet of the poor. Children chased after kites made from old newspapers while politicians' posters fluttered on walls, their promises bold and empty. From afar, chants of campaign songs floated through the wind, voices selling hope like ripe mangoes in the sun. The rainy season was near. Elders said it would wash the land clean, but others whispered that it would also bring storms of fate. Amara walked through this city like a breath of calm in the chaos. She was not born of wealth, yet there was something regal in the way she moved. Her laughter carried warmth. Her words carried reason. Those who met her said, "She is her mother's jewel, carved from patience and shaped by faith." Mama Neka, her mother, was a woman molded by hardship. Her hands bore the lines of many struggles, yet her spirit stood tall. Every morning before the sun rose, she knelt before the small clay pot that held her late husband's memory. She would whisper, "My husband, watch our child. Let her rise above this dust." Her prayers were the rhythm of their small home, constant, hopeful, unbroken. The people of Nkoro respected Mama Neka not for her beauty or wealth, but for her resilience. They would say, "A woman who buries her husband and still smiles has spoken to God and lived." And though her smile often trembled, her eyes never lost their spark, the spark of a mother who dreamed in gold while living in dust. Then came Chief Daikobasi, the man whose shadow touched every corner of Nkoro. His mansion stood like a hill carved from marble and pride. His smile could charm kings, but his words carried poison wrapped in silk. Some called him the savior of the poor, others the eater of their harvests. He gave freely, but always with eyes that measured what he would take in return. When Chief Dyke's gaze fell upon Amara at a town gathering, the air seemed to still. He spoke her name with the confidence of a man who believed everything he desired was already his. "Amara," he said, his voice rich and smooth, "your beauty could calm storms. A woman like you deserves to walk among kings." Amara bowed slightly, her tone respectful but distant. "Chief, storms are not calmed by beauty but by truth," the crowd murmured, some in awe, others in fear. From that day, Dyke's interest grew, and so did the whispers. In the quiet corners of the same town, Ebere watched from a distance. His heart carried both admiration and dread. A journalist with ink-stained fingers and weary eyes, he had seen men like Dyke rise and fall, men whose kindness was only as deep as the next election. He often met Amara at the well or beneath the almond tree where they once played as children. "Be careful, Amara," he said one evening, his voice low, almost trembling. "When a lion smiles at a dove, it is not friendship. It is hunger." Amara smiled sadly. "Ebere, you worry too much. Not every shadow hides a snake." He wanted to believe her, but his instincts screamed otherwise. As the first drops of rain began to fall, Ebere looked toward Dyke's mansion and whispered to himself, "Some storms do not cleanse, they consume." And so began the tale of Amara, the woman whose light would one day expose the darkest corners of Nkoro. The day Chief Dyke proposed to Amara, the whole of Nkoro seemed to stop breathing. Drummers gathered at the town square, their palms striking the leather skins until the air itself began to dance. Colorful masquerades twirled beneath the scorching sun, their raffia skirts brushing against the dust that glittered like gold. Broad-chested men beat talking drums that shouted Dyke's praise names, and women sang in high-pitched ululations that echoed across the sea breeze. The event was grander than any wedding festival Nkoro had seen. Cameramen from the national television circled the stage, recording every smile, every tear, every cheer. Banners fluttered reading, "Our daughter, our pride." Dyke stood in his white agbada, his face gleaming with confidence. He raised a gold ring for all to see. "Today," he proclaimed, "Nkoro becomes one family, bound by love and destiny." The crowd roared. Mama Neka wept with joy, her voice trembling with gratitude. Ah, my husband, wherever you are, your child has brought honor to our name. But Amara stood still in the center of it all. Her lips curved into a smile, but her heart felt heavy. The drums were too loud, the laughter too forced. She looked at Dyke, a man she barely knew, and something inside her whispered, "This light is too bright to be true." As Dyke slipped the ring onto her finger, thunder rumbled faintly in the distance. The sky darkened, not in anger but in warning. Yet the people only cheered louder, blinded by the promise of power and wealth. When night came, the celebration continued like a river that refused to rest. The courtyard was filled with roasted goat meat, palm wine, and the scent of burning firewood. Dancers swayed under oil lamps, their shadows flickering against the mud walls. But beneath the laughter, whispers began to stir. Two old men sat near the gate, their eyes narrowed. One murmured. Why would a man like Dyke choose a girl like her, a poor widow's daughter, just months before the election? The other replied, because purity sells better than gold. He needs a spotless name to hide his stains. Nearby, a group of women exchanged uneasy glances. Did you not hear, one said, lowering her voice, that his first wife fled to Ghana under strange circumstances? Shh, another warned, glancing toward the guards. Do not let his men hear such talk. The chief's smile hides fangs. Amara, seated among guests, could sense the unease even through the laughter. Every toast to her happiness felt hollow. Every blessing sounded rehearsed. She watched her mother laughing beside politicians, her hands adorned with coral beads she had never owned before. The weight of expectation pressed on Amara like a crown made of iron. She forced a smile when Dyke leaned close and whispered, Smile for the people, my wife. They must see perfection. Her heart whispered back, but what if perfection is a lie? The following day, the Igbanku, the sacred wine-carrying ceremony, drew the entire town once again. The compound smelled of palm wine and incense, and ancestral drums beat with slow, steady reverence. Women wore shimmering wrappers, and elders filled the air with chants of blessing. Amara emerged, her head wrapped in coral-red cloth, holding a wooden gourd of palm wine. Her steps were graceful but heavy. The tradition demanded that she search for her husband among the crowd and offer him the wine, a symbol of choice and submission. As she moved through the gathering, her eyes scanned the faces, her mother's pride, the elders' approval, the crowd's hunger for spectacle. When she finally found Dyke sitting proudly among his peers, she knelt before him. The air went still. Even the drums softened, as if afraid to interrupt fate. Just then, the village priest rose from his seat. His beard was white as salt, and his eyes burned like dying coals. Raising his staff, he said in a voice that rolled like thunder, The path to power is paved with souls unseen. Let her walk with wisdom, for not all that glitters is blessed by the gods. A chill swept through the crowd. Some laughed nervously. Others crossed themselves in silence. Dyke forced a smile, pretending not to hear, but Amara's hand trembled as she offered him the wine. When he drank, sealing their union, it felt less like love and more like prophecy. Rain began to fall just as the ceremony ended. Soft, hesitant drops that kissed the earth before turning to a steady downpour. Children squealed with joy and danced barefoot in the mud, their laughter echoing through the village. Elders raised their hands toward the heavens, blessing the couple's union. But high above, on the roof of the ancestral temple, a lone raven perched, its feathers glistening with rain. It watched Amara and Dyke walk away beneath the storm. Hand in hand, yet worlds apart, the people of Nkoro rejoiced, singing of a new dawn, but the wind carried a whisper the drums could not silence. A bride of promise has been chosen, and with her begins the tale of power, pride, and destiny yet to unfold. Under the blazing sun of Nkoro, the people cheered, their voices rising like waves crashing against the shore. Banners bearing Amara's face fluttered in the wind, her image radiant, her smile serene. She was no longer the humble daughter of a market woman. She was now the First Lady, the crowned queen of the state. They called her Nandine Koro, the mother of the people. Everywhere she went, drums followed her name. Children sang songs in her honor. Women stretched their hands to touch her gown. The people believed her heart beat for them. Her gentle words, of peace, of unity, of hope, spread like the morning sun, touching every corner of Nkoro. But beneath her royal robes, Amara's spirit trembled. The palace glittered like paradise, yet it smelled faintly of something hidden, of fear, of whispers, of lies that danced like shadows in candlelight. At night, when the servants bowed and the lights dimmed, she stood by the grand window overlooking the city. "They call me Mother," she murmured, her reflection staring back, cold and distant. "But who will mother me?" Behind her, the golden corridors stretched long and lonely, echoing with laughter that was not hers, laughter that belonged to power. Her crown was made of roses, yes, but beneath the petals lay thorns sharp enough to bleed her spirit. And as the moon rose high, its light spilling across the marble floor, Amara knew the truth that no applause could drown. She had been crowned not in freedom, but in silence. The new mansion rose like a golden hill at the edge of Nkoro. Marble floors, carved pillars, and gardens that smelled of roses and rain. Mama Neka could hardly believe her eyes. "Eh, my daughter, the gods have remembered us," she said, clapping her hands in joy. Her laughter filled the wide halls, echoing against glass and gold. Dyke stood nearby, smiling the smile of a king who knew his gift had bought more than gratitude. "You deserve comfort, Mama," he said softly. "You raised a queen." But in Amara's eyes, the brightness of that mansion felt blinding. "Mama," she whispered one evening, her voice trembling, "this house feels too quiet, too heavy. I am not at peace here." Mama Neka waved her hand as if chasing a fly. "Ah, child, peace does not live in every palace, but wealth feeds every soul. You must learn to drink from the cup given to you." Her words, sweet and sharp, sliced through Amara's heart. She looked at her mother, the same woman who once told her to value truth over gold, and saw a stranger dressed in pride. That night, as the crickets sang outside and the mansion lights glowed like stars, Amara wept alone. The bond that had once been her shield now felt like a chain, and in the silence between mother and daughter, the thread of family began to tear. That night, the wind carried a strange calm, the kind that comes before revelation. Amara lay on her bed, her eyes heavy, her heart restless. When sleep finally came, it came with fire and gold. She found herself standing in a vast field where the soil glittered like crushed stars. The air shimmered with gold dust, yet beneath it she could smell the faint scent of iron, the smell of blood. From the haze her late father appeared, his figure wrapped in light. His eyes, deep and knowing, seemed to hold both sorrow and pride. "My daughter," his voice rolled like thunder across the plain. "When truth is buried in gold, it still bleeds beneath the shine." Amara's knees trembled. "Papa, I am lost in a house that glitters but feels hollow. How do I find my way?" He reached out, his weathered hands holding a small clay lamp. Its flame burned low, steady despite the wind. "Carry this even in the storm," he said. "Do not fear the darkness. It is there that light proves its strength." As he spoke, the gold around them began to melt into red, the color of truth unhidden. Amara clutched the lamp to her chest, its warmth spreading through her heart. She woke with a gasp, her body trembling, her eyes wet with tears. The dawn crept through her window, painting her face in pale gold. She knew it was no ordinary dream. It was a message from the ancestors. The spirits of Nkoro had spoken through her father's voice. She sat upright, whispering into the quiet, "I have heard you. Papa, I will carry the lamp." And for the first time in many moons, the fear in her chest loosened. What once felt like weakness now burned as purpose, the quiet beginning of a storm that would soon shake Nkoro's throne. The morning sun rose slowly over Nkoro, bathing the town in soft orange light. On every street, on every bus, and even on the market walls, one face reigned, Amara's. Her smile, wide and gentle, looked down upon the people like a blessing. The words beneath her image read, "The Mother of Mercy, the Light of Ankoro." Traders bowed to her posters, women touched her image as if it carried divine favor, and children pointed, chanting her name. Yet behind those smiles and praises, Amara's heart twisted. She sat in her car, staring at a giant billboard that showed her face beside Dyke's. He waved like a savior. She, a queen of compassion. "How did I become this?" she whispered, her voice heavy with shame. Each poster felt like a wound, her smile a mask for corruption she could no longer ignore. The very face that once symbolized hope had become a shield for deceit. Inside her chest, something fragile cracked. She remembered her father's voice. "Gold can hide blood, but it cannot wash it away." That night, the palace slept under silver moonlight, but Amara could not find peace. She paced the long corridor, her footsteps echoing softly against the marble floors. The portraits of past leaders stared down like silent judges. Her spirit stirred, restless, hungry for truth. She sat by the window, clutching the small clay lamp her father had given her in the dream. Its light flickered weakly, but it burned. Then, like a whisper carried by the wind, his voice returned. "Let truth speak," he said, "even if it shakes the palace." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Papa, I am afraid. They will destroy anyone who speaks." "Then let them try," the voice echoed. "A lie may wear gold, but truth wears eternity." When the wind settled, Amara rose. Her hands trembled, but her heart was steady. She knew what she must do. She picked up her phone and dialed a number she had not called in months. "Ebere," she said softly when the line connected. There was silence, then a cautious reply. "Amara, do you know what danger you invite with that call?" Her voice broke but carried strength. "Danger already lives with me, my friend. I need your help. It's time the people of Ankoro knew what truly hides behind my husband's throne." Ebere sighed deeply. Then we walked the path of fire together. The nights that followed were thick with secrecy. Amara and Ebere met in abandoned buildings, their faces hidden under shawls, their words whispered like prayers. Old files, coded letters, and forgotten ledgers changed hands. Each page revealed something darker: ghost projects, missing millions, and names of those silenced for knowing too much. Amara held one document and gasped. "These funds, they were meant for the flood victims, for the children who lost their homes." Her voice broke. "He let them starve while we dined in gold." Ebere nodded grimly. "His power is built on their bones. But now we give them back their voice." She looked at him, tears glistening. "And if this destroys me?" He met her eyes. "Then you will be remembered as the woman who traded comfort for conscience. The truth will roar louder than his name." Amara pressed the papers to her chest, her resolve burning brighter than fear. In the still night of Ankoro, two souls carried the weight of justice, the pen and the heart, rising against the throne of lies. The night before the election settled over Ankoro like a heavy cloak. The sky burned with the light of fireworks, but beneath the bursts of color came the crack of distant gunfire, sharp, cold, and real. In the streets, youths danced and shouted campaign slogans, their laughter too loud to hide the fear that lived in their throats. Dogs barked. Radios blared. The wind carried both prayers and curses. In the heart of it all stood Dyke's mansion, bright, guarded, and silent inside. Soldiers lined the gates, their rifles glinting beneath the lamps. Yet no amount of metal could keep out the unease that seeped through every marble wall. Amara sat by the window, watching the storm clouds gather. Each flash of lightning painted her face in silver light. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from the knowledge of what she had done. The truth she and Ebere had set free now waited like thunder on the edge of the sky. She touched the clay lamp on her table. "Papa," she whispered, "the storm is coming. Let me not drown before it breaks." Outside, the wind rose, and the first drops of rain began to fall, heavy, like the footsteps of fate. It did not take long for the storm to find its way inside. Dyke burst into her room with the fury of a wounded lion. His eyes burned and his breath came fast. In his shaking hands, he held a bundle of papers, the same ones Amara and Aberi had uncovered. The ink was smeared from his grip. "You!" he roared, his voice echoing through the mansion halls. "You did this!" Amara turned slowly, her face pale but calm. "The truth was always yours to face," she said quietly. He slammed the papers against the wall. "You think truth feeds the hungry? You think honesty builds empires? Power does, power!" His voice cracked with anger. "Without me, you are nothing but dust from the streets." Amara's eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. "And yet it is that dust that feeds your pride. You wear it like gold, but gold cannot cover blood." His hand struck her before he even knew it had moved. The sound filled the room, sharp as a whip. She staggered but did not fall. "The gods will judge you," she whispered. Lightning flashed, thunder rolled, and for a brief moment, the entire room glowed white. It felt as though the ancestors themselves had turned their eyes upon the quarrel, watching, weighing, waiting. Dyke's final words cut deeper than the slap. "You were never my wife," he hissed. "You were my campaign." Something inside her broke. She turned and fled, barefoot, tears mixing with rain. Guards shouted, doors opened, but no one stopped her. She ran into the storm, her gown soaked, her heart pounding with grief and freedom. Behind her, the mansion that once glittered like heaven now stood like a ghostly cage swallowed by thunder. Hours later, Amara reached the edge of Ankoro, where the road met the sea and an old church stood, worn but steady. The night still raged, the sound of riots echoing from the distance. An old priest opened the door when she knocked, his face lit by candlelight. "Child," he said gently, "the world outside is on fire." Amara fell to her knees, trembling. "Then let me burn with truth, Father. I have nowhere else to go." He led her inside and shut the door. The church smelled of incense and damp earth. Wooden carvings of angels lined the altar, their wings cracked but still open. Outside, soldiers circled the church, their boots sinking into the wet mud. They had come to trap her, yet inside those walls she found something no palace had given her: peace. As thunder roared, Amara knelt before the altar and lifted her face toward the flickering candles. "If truth must bleed," she whispered, "let it bleed through me." The priest placed his trembling hand on her shoulder. "Child," he said softly, "no lie stands forever. The truth walks even through fire." Dawn broke with the sound of bells and chaos. The first rays of sun touched Nkoro's rooftops, revealing the scars of a night filled with rage. Smoke curled from burnt tires. The air was heavy with dust and defiance. Inside the church, Amara sat still as the priest prayed over her. Then, from a crackling radio by the altar, a voice burst through. Eberi's. His article had gone live. The truth had escaped. "Breaking news," the announcer read. "Documents leaked from Nkoro State reveal massive corruption, stolen relief funds, and secret recordings exposing Chief Dyke Obasi." The word spread like wildfire. Market women stopped mid-trade. Taxi drivers abandoned their cars. The people rose as one, chanting, "Justice for Nkoro." Dyke's name, once spoken with reverence, now dripped from every tongue like poison. His posters were torn, his mansion besieged. In the church? Amara lifted her eyes to the heavens, tears running down her face. The truth had spoken, and though her world burned, her soul was free. The night swallowed Nkoro in a terrible silence before the wind began to howl. Inside the grand mansion that once glittered with stolen gold, Dyke stood before a pile of papers, records of his sins. His hands shook as he fed them into the fire, one after another. Flames rose like angry spirits, licking the ceiling, casting monstrous shadows on his face. Sweat poured down his brow, but his eyes burned brighter than the inferno before him. "No one will remember," he muttered. "Not the lies, not the blood, not her betrayal." The fire crackled, hissing back as if mocking him. The portraits on the walls, his triumphs, his family, began to curl in the heat. Outside, the storm roared, thunder answering the cries of the dying mansion. As the flames climbed higher, Dyke's pride refused to bow. "I am still Chief Dyke of Encoro," he roared. But the gods had already turned their faces. A beam broke from above, sparks showered, and the blaze swallowed him whole. By dawn, nothing remained but ashes and the smell of smoke drifting across the city. The people gathered in stunned silence. Elders stood before the ruins and spoke with heavy hearts. When a man builds his throne on blood, the earth itself will reclaim it. Smoke still hung over Encoro like a ghost when the morning light crept in. The city was quiet, the kind of quiet that follows grief and revelation. Amara stepped out of the small church barefoot, her white gown stained with soot, her eyes hollow yet calm. She looked toward the horizon where the mansion once stood and whispered, "The fire has spoken." Rain began to fall, soft at first, then steady, washing the streets, the ashes, the blood. People emerged from their homes, looking to Amara not as the First Lady, but as one of them. Children pointed, elders bowed their heads. The priest's voice broke through the gentle rain. "Power burns fast, but truth endures like the earth." Amara raised her eyes to the sky. The storm was over, but its lessons would live in every heart that had seen the fire. The land was cleansing itself, and so were its people. The morning sun rose weakly over Encoro, its light touching the ruins of the mansion that once ruled the land with fear. Ministers and aides gathered at the church courtyard, where Amara stood among the people, her white scarf fluttering in the wind. One of them, dressed in fine lace, bowed and said, "Madam, the council has spoken. You must lead. The people trust your name." Amara's eyes softened, but her voice held firm. Encoro does not need another ruler dressed in silk. It needs hands that can mend what greed has broken. They begged, promising comfort, wealth, and power. But she shook her head. "My father taught me that true crowns are worn in the heart, not on the head." And so she walked away from gold and thrones, choosing the red dust roads instead. Day after day, she worked with the poor, patching school roofs, feeding widows, holding orphans close. Her laughter returned, gentle but strong, like rain after a long drought. In the empty halls of the mansion, Mama Neka sat surrounded by silence. The mirrors reflected a woman dressed in jewels but stripped of joy. Her trembling hands clutched a necklace once meant to show power. "I traded my daughter's peace for pride," she whispered, her tears falling onto the marble floor. When Amara entered, the old woman's sobs broke into the air like thunder. "My child!" Mama Nika cried. "Can a mother ever wash away the stain of her own greed?" Amara knelt beside her, placing a gentle hand over her mother's. The river does not blame the rain that floods it. What matters is that the water finds its way home. They embraced. A long, trembling silence between forgiveness and sorrow. Outside, the wind carried the sound of healing, slow but true. Slow but true. Ebri sat beneath a mango tree behind his small office, his arm still wrapped in bandages from the chaos that had nearly claimed him. The people now called him the pen that bled for truth. His writings filled every corner of the nation, each word a reminder that silence is a wound too deep to ignore. When Amara arrived, he smiled weakly. "You should have chosen peace, not war, my sister," she replied softly. "Peace built on lies is no peace at all." They laughed then, quietly. Two souls who had walked through fire and still found reason to hope. "The truth may burn," Eberi said, "but it clears the land for new seeds." And Amara nodded, her eyes glistening with respect. At sunset, Amara stood before the old palace gates. The golden crest above the entrance had melted away in the fire, leaving only stone, gray and bare. She touched it gently and whispered, "Crowns made of lies crumble like sand." Behind her stretched the new school she had built, walls painted bright blue, filled with the laughter of young girls. To them she taught not only letters and numbers, but wisdom. Beauty may open doors, she told them, her voice carrying through the courtyard. But wisdom decides where you walk, the girls repeated her words, clapping their hands in rhythm, their voices echoing across the village. And so, the tale of Amara spread like wind across Nkoro, the woman who lost her crown, yet found her soul. The people called her not a queen, but the heart of the land. The old church stood like a wounded guardian, its walls blackened by smoke, its roof patched with tin, yet its candles still burned. Amara knelt before the altar, her head bowed in silence. The priest, his voice steady like an ancient drum, placed his trembling hand upon her head. "My daughter," he said softly, "a kingdom built on deceit falls beneath its own shadow, but a woman who stands for truth plants seeds that outlive empires." His words carried the weight of generations, the kind of wisdom that sinks into the soul like rain into dry soil. The villagers who filled the small church murmured in agreement. An old man whispered, "It is as our fathers said, truth may sleep, but it never dies." The priest raised his hand to the heavens. "Let her story be a lamp in dark places," he declared. "For when the world forgets its moral path, the gods raise a woman to remind it." Amara's tears glistened like morning dew, not of sorrow, but of peace. The villagers responded with a chorus of amens, their voices blending into the hum of ancestral memory. When dawn came, the sky blushed with gold and pink. Children raced through the open fields of Nkoro, their bare feet slapping against the moist earth. The scent of fresh rain still lingered, washing away the bitterness of yesterday. They sang as they ran, a song their mothers had taught them at sunrise. She carried truth in her heart, though fire burned her name. From ashes she rose, from sorrow she came. The woman of Nkoro, the mother of tomorrow. Their laughter echoed through the hills like the call of freedom. Drums beat softly in the distance, joined by flutes and clapping hands. The storyteller's voice, deep, calm, and timeless, closed the tale. When truth takes root, even ashes bloom. For no storm can kill a seed planted in honesty. The song lingered in the wind, carried from one home to another until the entire village sang it, a hymn of rebirth. Peace, like the first rain after Harmattan, settled over Nkoro. The streets that once carried cries of fear now buzzed with the sound of hammers and new beginnings. Men rebuilt homes with their own hands, women painted walls with colors of hope, and children planted trees where palaces once stood. The golden statues of Dyke, symbols of greed, were gone. In their place rose murals of unity, painted faces of farmers, traders, mothers, and teachers. On one wall, a portrait of Amara smiled, not as a queen, but as one of the people. From a quiet hill outside the town, Amara watched the new dawn unfold. The wind brushed through her hair as she whispered to herself, "Let this land remember that truth is the only throne that lasts." And as she turned to leave, the village bells rang, not in mourning but in celebration. The rebirth of Nkoro had begun, and its story would live forever in the hearts of its people.